Welcome to this author interaction of the 2022 Nlf Reading Challenge. My name is Deepthi, and I'm very excited to be here. We hope you are too. Before we begin the interaction, do allow me to give you a brief introduction about the Nlf Reading Challenge, followed by a few housekeeping rules for today's session. The Nlf Reading Challenge is a 4-month-long reading event from March to June 2022 for students between 10 to 13 years of age. It runs for students across India on the competitive and the non-competitive tracks. In addition to fun book-based activities and regular author interactions, the challenge will conclude with a quiz competition that will see the 3 best teams win gold, silver, and bronze engraved trophies respectively, certificates of achievement, and a great set of books. For today's event, please use the Q&A box to type out your questions or your responses to what's being discussed during the session. If you're a student, a teacher, or a school librarian, please mention the name of your school along with your question as well. Today, we are privileged to have with us the award-winning author and illustrator, Remy Lai. Remy studied fine arts with a major in painting and drawing. She was born in Indonesia, grew up in Singapore, and currently lives in Brisbane, Australia, where she writes and draws stories for kids with her 2 dogs by her side. Today, Remy is here to speak with us about her debut book, Pie in the Sky, which is a part prose, part graphic novel about 2 young immigrant brothers. It is poignant, heartwarming, and hilarious, all at the same time. Welcome, Remy. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us, Remy. First of all, congrats on such a fantastic debut novel, your first book, and it's received such great reviews, starred reviews across the world. So congratulations once again. It's such a beautiful book, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the book, about how it came about?
Yes. So I'm an author and illustrator. So as an illustrator, I tend to think in pictures. So I would have pictures pop inside my head, and then sometimes that's how I get ideas when a picture pops into my head. So in this case, for Pie in the Sky, I had this picture of these 2 brothers, these 2 young boys, secretly baking cakes. But I didn't know, I couldn't figure out what their story was. So I just put it aside for months, and then it was like many months later that I suddenly realized that the boys can't speak English. And so once I figured that out, the story fell into place. And then I borrowed heavily from my own childhood, because I only learned English when I was about 9 years old. So I knew very well what it's like to move to a new country where you don't speak the language.
Right. Yeah, and there is a lot of inspiration from your own life, like you mentioned. You also said, I read somewhere that the younger brother, so the book is about 2 brothers, Jingwen. For the audience here, the book is about 2 brothers, Jingwen and Yang Hao, who moved to Australia after their dad's sudden death, tragic death in a car accident. So they moved to Australia with their mother. And we'll talk a little bit more about the story in a bit, but I was wondering, I read that the younger brother, Yang Hao, is an amalgamation of your 4 siblings, plus also heavily inspired by your nephew. That's such an interesting thing to put in the book.
Yeah, so in the book, the two brothers are always annoying each other. They fight quite a bit, not just with words, sometimes with punches and kicks. So so there are 5 children in my family. So I have 4 siblings. And so when we were kids, we fought a lot just because there's so many of us. So we're always fighting. And so the relationship between the 2 brothers was definitely inspired by my relationship with my siblings, because even though we love each other, but we also really annoy each other. So we fought a lot. And so but of course, when I was writing this book, I'm an adult. So, but my nephew, that's my dog. But my nephew, he was, when I was writing this book, he was about 8 years old. So he was about the age of the younger brother. And so my nephew is also really cheeky and very naughty, like the younger brother. So he also inspired the younger brother.
Yeah, and two such well-defined characters, I should say. Definitely relatable. So the phrase pie in the sky, it means something that's impossible to achieve. And that's also the name of the cake shop that Jingwen's father was going to open in Australia, their new home. It's such a fitting name because it perfectly encapsulates Jingwen's and his father's unrealized dreams. So the unopened cake shop is a huge factor in how Jingwen deals with the sudden tragic death of his father. And he turns to baking all of the pie in the sky cakes in order to try and remember his father and keep the connection alive. So this, at least according to me, is the heart of the book. Jingwen's grief over losing his father, his home, and his ability to communicate, because like you said, they don't speak English. His constant guilt about how his father died, and even his anger at his mother for being happy in the strange world. So this is a lot of emotions to put in a middle grade novel. And you've managed to make it funny as well, which is it's no easy feat. So how difficult was it to take such big emotions and put it in a novel?
I think when I was a kid, I remember having really big emotions. I mean, I still do now, but I think it seems when you're a kid, it's really hard to step back a little bit and see the big picture. It's a little bit easier when you're older, but when you're a kid, every little thing matters. and and so I don't really have a big problem like trying to remember my childhood. My editor, who I work with for all my books so far, he said that I have the mind of a 12-year-old in a good way, was it? So I didn't have a lot of problems trying to remember what it felt like as a kid. But also, I personally like to read books that not only make me cry, but also make me laugh. Because if it's a book is just making me cry, I think I might be too sad. and I always like what we say, the bittersweet books. So that's what I wanted to do for this book also. But you mentioned the title Pie in the Sky, and that actually wasn't the original title for the book. The original title was actually Rules for Making Cakes. So because there are rules to making the cakes because the boys are making the cakes secretly so that their mother doesn't find out. It was my editor who actually suggested, hey, why don't we change it to Pie in the Sky? Because, it's the name of the dad's cake shop and it really fits the theme.
It really, really does. What a perfect title for the book. So talking a little bit about that, another main thread of the book is Jingwen's feeling of alienation. And initially, when he couldn't understand what everyone was saying, he pictured them perfectly. It was such a fitting illustration as aliens. You literally drew them as Martians, the rest of all the other Australians. But very early in the book, he has a realization. There's a line where he thinks, to me, other people sound like they're speaking an alien language, but to them, Yang Hao and I are the Martians. This feeling of otherness is such an important topic that we need to discuss with everything that's going on in the world right now. It's also an integral part of the migrant experience. So was conveying this feeling in the book important to you when you first started writing? I have one more follow-up question after that. So you also highlighted the otherness and alienation experienced by migrants, right? So was this important for you in order to attempt to invite non-migrants to stand in the shoes of immigrants and to be empathetic towards what they're going through, to basically show other people what migrants are going through, especially children?
Yeah, I think that's one of the results of the book. But when I'm writing, I wouldn't say that I am actively thinking, oh, I want people to empathize with the kids in a way that, because for me, when I'm reading a book, if I know that the book is going to teach me a lesson, sometimes I don't want to read it because I just want to read for fun. So when I'm writing, I try to keep that in mind. Like I try to just tell myself that I'm just trying to tell the story as truthfully as I can. So, and then whatever the reader takes from it, from the story, is really up to them. Yeah, but so when I was writing the book, I was exploring my own feelings about when I was a kid and I moved countries and had to learn new language. So when I moved countries, I moved without my parents. So I was alone with my siblings. So that made it a lot harder. And so I there are lots of kids like that who move to new countries and then have to learn a new language. So I guess I wanted those kids also to see that, they're not alone, that other kids are going through the same thing. And, it's hard, but you can do it and you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's why Own Voices books are so important. And thank you so much for bringing us your story. So, yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So we actually have an audience question from Varsha Session, who's actually a popular children's author from India, which also connects to my next question that we wanted to ask you. So Varsha asks, do you think it was an act of courage to use two forms of writing in a single novel, especially your debut novel?
So do they mean like using both words and pictures?
Yes.
I actually don't think it's courage, because I naturally like pictures in my stories. So I actually wrote Pie in the Sky first as a full graphic novel. I wrote it as a full graphic novel, and then I started drawing it, and then I realized that it doesn't really work as a graphic novel because the main character doesn't speak English. So a lot of the things that you know about him come from his thoughts. And so if it were a full graphic novel, you would have lots of the cloud-shaped thought bubbles. And I didn't really like reading a graphic novel with a lot of thought bubbles. So I thought, I have to switch it to something to prose. So I actually rewrote the whole book as a prose novel with just the words. But then I realized that I naturally like to tell stories with pictures. And there are things that I can tell better in words, in pictures than in words. And so that's why I added the pictures back in. So I don't think it's really courage per se. Yeah.
Nice. So this was what I was going to ask as well, because I wanted to ask you how you landed on this particular format. But I've also picked out a few bits from the story, which I would still want to tell the audience. So you've illustrated the feeling of otherness so perfectly by depicting all of the alienness as actual aliens by drawing them as Martians. And the illustrations perfectly complement the text. There's an especially poignant moment where Jingwen's younger brother Yang Hao turns into an alien because he is now speaking Martian, that is English, with his mother and her boss. And there's also another moment where Jingwen struggles with his lack of words to communicate with his new friend Ben, where he thinks, I have so much I want to say to Ben. And then there's an illustration with thought bubbles where, all of the things that he wants to say, after which he thinks, but I don't have the English words. So I guess right now my question would be like, the power of language is so important, right? And it's not really a question, it's more of a thought right now. Yeah, the power of language to help us communicate. Yeah. So maybe do you want to talk a little bit about that, about how language maybe helps us cross boundaries, helps us get into the shoes of other people?
Yeah, I think when you can't communicate with someone, it's really hard because we can't read what other people are thinking, so we don't know what they want. We have to say things, or at least write down things. So obviously I knew how important language is because I had to learn it when I moved to a new country. But so when I moved to Singapore, I had to learn English and I had to learn Mandarin also. So I was learning two languages at the same time, which was really hard. And when at that time, I was really angry with my mom because she made me learn Mandarin because it was really hard. And I was like, why do I have to learn Mandarin? I don't need it. I mean, if I know English, like why do I need other languages? But then I realized that when I was older, I realized that there are really certain words in Mandarin that you can't say in English, and vice versa, of course, and then in other languages also. So because I think language is also really part of the culture that you are in in a way. So when you learn a language, you also learn the culture in a way.
Yeah, and there's so much context within each language that gets lost in translation.
Yeah.
So it struck us while reading the book that you don't actually mention where Yang Hao and Jingwen come from. And so you only used the word home in the book. You don't really talk about the exact country or even continent that they come from. Of course, it's up to the reader to figure out, maybe based on their names. But was this an intentional way to give the story a more universal feeling? While most immigrants often undergo similar experiences, there are also nuances to what different immigrants from different cultures, regions, and races undergo. So, what led you to highlight the commonalities of the migrant experience over the details and the intricacies of each person's experience?
It was a conscious decision not to mention the country, but it wasn't really to make it more universal. But I think that sometimes, especially when adults read books like that, if you mention where the character comes from, they tend to be able to only think about the differences between that other country and their own country. I think sometimes they tend to just concentrate on that. And then it's kind of like if I said that the two brothers were from Indonesia or something, and then the adult readers probably would think, oh, what's Indonesia like? What's the culture like? What's really different about it? And so that really becomes about the differences between the reader and the characters. But I wanted the readers to see the kids, the two brothers, as kids first, and then immigrants second. So they're not just their identity is not just immigrants. They're also kids, and they're also, they're funny kids, they're thoughtful kids. They're also undergoing things. And so I wanted, because when you see a person as an immigrant, sometimes you only see that part of them and then you don't see other parts of them. So that was the main reason why I was doing that. And another reason was because, so I did mention that, I used their names. So their names are Chinese names because I wanted them to also have Chinese roots like I do. But then I don't exactly tell you where because you could have a Chinese name but not be from China. You could be from other places. So I didn't want to complicate things by saying that they're of Chinese descent, but they're actually from Indonesia, like I am. So because then the adult readers will tend to concentrate on that again. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we would tend to get lost in the complexities, the intricacies, rather than just seeing them as kids.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned just now that in the beginning you said the image of the two boys baking popped into your head. That's a that's a really random image to have pop in your head. So do you bake?
I used to bake quite a bit, but then I started then because I bake so many cakes, I have to eat cakes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is not very good for you. So I had to stop. And also at that time, I was watching a lot of MasterChef, the TV show. So I guess that's why that baking picture popped into my head.
Nice. And like it says in the book, cakes always make you smile. I completely agree. I'm sure everyone in the audience does too. So we have another question from the audience. Barsha asks, If it's not too personal a question, I'd love to know why you dedicated this book to your mother.
Okay, that's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked this question because nobody noticed it. I guess my mom, so my mom, obviously it was really not easy for her to raise 5 kids. We weren't very easy kids. And then my dad, so like Jingwon and Yang Hao, my dad passed when I was in high school. And so my mom had to raise us alone, which which was really hard. So I kind of want to thank her for raising us, for everything that she did for us. And my family is not the kind of family who says I love you. Like if I said I love you to my brother, he would say, "What's wrong with you?" Something like that. That's just the way we are. We're fine. We love each other, but we're not very affectionate with the words. So this is my way of telling my mom, like, thank you for everything that you did. Yeah.
That is so thoughtful, and I'm sure she would have been really touched. So you also mentioned you know a few other languages. So have you thought of writing in any of the other languages that you know?
No, I think I'm most fluent in English. So I can speak Indonesian and Mandarin, but not as fluent as English. So I don't think I would take on that challenge.
Okay, all right. But you've also post Pie in the Sky. You've released some more wonderful books, which we really can't wait to read. It looks really, really fun. And your latest book, Picasso, is based on your dog who's right next to you over there. Do you want to tell us his name and a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so this is the book. So remember what this dog looks like. It's about a dog who goes shopping. And then it's inspired by my dog here. He's asleep, but let me see if we can check. So you can see they look really similar there. So my dog's name is Poop Roller because he likes to roll in poop. Yeah.
And it has such an interesting premise as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's about a dog. This one, his name. He carries a basket and goes shopping by himself without his owner. So one day, this girl here, Jo, she sees the dog shopping, and so she follows the dog because you don't usually see a dog shopping. So she was curious about it, so she follows the dog. But then when she was following the dog, she runs into a bunch of her friends from school, and they think that the dog is hers because she is with the dog. And she wanted to make new friends, so she just let them believe that the dog is hers, but actually it's not. So then she has to keep on telling bigger and bigger lies because she knows that if her friends find out that the dog is not hers, they would be really, really mad.
Nice. And this is also this is a full graphic novel?
Yeah, it's a graphic novel.
It's a full graphic.
It's a full graphic novel this way. So this one has a lot more drawing. So I spent many, many more months drawing this than Pie in the Sky.
Okay. And you also have a set of early reader graphic novels. So I was wondering, for the teachers, parents, and librarians who are listening, is there anything that you would like to share about the format of the graphic novel itself and how you think it could get reluctant readers to get hooked onto reading?
Yeah, I think graphic novels. So this is my early reader one, which is this one is about an elephant here. So it's a full graphic novel. So this one, the storyline is a lot simpler because it's for younger readers, for 6 to 9 year olds. This one. So I think kids naturally like things with pictures, as I did too. When I was a kid, I read lots of comic books, and then because there are not as many words as prose novels, whatever words are there have to really count, and so they would definitely learn new vocabularies in the books. And also I think graphic novels is really important for visual literacy because you have to learn to read not only the pictures and the words, but you have to learn how to interpret them together, the words and the picture together. So yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, definitely graphic novels is a great way, I personally think, to get children hooked onto reading. So thank you for all your wonderful work. So, as an author and illustrator, what advice would you give to aspiring writers in the audience?
I think maybe if you have a goal to become a writer, I would say remember to have fun. Because sometimes when you have a goal to become something, to do something, and then you don't reach your goal fast enough, you might get frustrated, and you might start hating writing. And so I think it's really important then to remember why you love writing in the first place, and so try to have fun while you're doing it.
That's such great advice. So, we're almost at the end of our half an hour. We have an audience question that just came in from Shweta Jain. We all already did touch upon this a little bit, but maybe if you have anything else to add. She asks, is any character in this book or any part of the plot, pie in the sky, any part of the plot based on your real life experiences? Is there anything else
Yes.
that you would like to add?
Yeah, so the immigration part was real, and then in the book, Yang Hao reads, the younger brother reads English books to improve his English, and one of the books that he read is
The Little Prince.
the Little Prince. Yes, sorry, and so this is actually the copy that I've had since I was about 10 years old. So this is the only book from my childhood that I've kept. So this book is really old. And so this was also what I read when I was learning English. And so like the younger brother, when he comes across a word that he doesn't know, he would, look up the meaning in the dictionary and then write down the meanings inside the book. So that's what I used to do when I was about, I don't know if you can see it, when I was about 10 years old. So you can see that's my handwriting here. So that part is true. And then another part that was true is when the older brother gets really angry at the younger brother, and he leaves the younger brother behind at the bus station. And then so he ended up at the police station because they thought that he was a lost kid. So that also really happened. When I was about, I think 11, my older sister left me behind at the bus station. And then the police thought that I was missing, that I was lost. And at that time, I was mad at my sister for something. I don't even remember what. So I didn't tell the police that I wasn't lost. And then so they ended up taking me back to the police station, and then where they called my guardian up to pick me up. So that part was true.
Wow. Well, what a way to keep that experience alive. I'm sure your sister does not like the idea of that being like put in a book.
Yeah. So when I was writing the book, I asked her, "Do you remember that when that happened?" She said, "Yeah, I remember." So I asked her, "Do you remember why you left me at the bus station?" She didn't remember why, but she did remember my mom giving her a big scolding for it. So yeah.
What a wonderful story. All right, so we are actually at the end of our half an hour. That was such a quick half an hour. I can't believe that just flew by. So thank you so much for joining us today, Remy. This has been extremely wonderful. I really loved the book and I loved talking about the book. And we wish you all the very best. And we can't wait to get our hands on your other books as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.